Welcome in, everyone, to another Fantasy Football 5 Takeaways video, giving you 5 takeaways from the previous week. As always, if you like my content, make sure to leave a like, a comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel. With that said, let's jump in to takeaway number 1. Bijan Robinson vanished this week, as you can see on the thumbnail. He was a little sick, some sort of mysterious illness that Arthur Smith conveniently didn't tell us about before the week started. He had 1 carry for 3 yards on the final drive. He was healthy enough to play on the final drive with the game on the line, game tied, but didn't play before that. Very strange. I'm not quite buying Arthur Smith's explanation, but with that said, Tyler Algier had 21 carries for 59 yards, 3 catches for 53. Cordell Patterson, 10 carries for 56 yards. I don't know if you can trust Bijan Robinson next week. I mean, you probably have to. He's not going to be in my RB1 range, but I'm probably still going to start him if he's active. But I know I'm going to get a lot of questions. Oh, should I trade Bijan Robinson for this? Should I trade him for that? The answer is probably no. It's one game, an aberration. Hopefully, that's what it is. He was getting 18 touches per game before this one. So it's not like he wasn't involved. I see a lot of people on Twitter taking victory laps. Oh, I knew Bijan Robinson wasn't. There's no victory lap to take. He was getting great usage. I mean, one of the best usages off the bat for a rookie running back because he was consistently involved from week 1. So we'll see. But more than anything, it just pissed me off. Let's move on to takeaway number 2. We finally got the Todd Monken new offense. Lamar Jackson carried the Ravens, not on the ground, but through the air. He had 353 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, 21 of 27. He also added a rushing touchdown with 36 rushing yards. They beat the Lions. They crushed them, 38-6. Now, some people are going to say, well, Todd Monken, everything has changed. Let's pump the brakes on that a tiny bit. It was Lamar Jackson's first game with more than 237 passing yards all year. So I hope this is the start of something new. Now, unfortunately, Gus Edwards had an 80-yard catch. So that kind of took away about a third of the passing, or a third, 25% of the passing yards went to Gus Edwards on that one play. So the receivers didn't have the huge games that you would think. Zay Flowers, nice day for 4 for 75 on 6 targets. Mark Andrews caught 2 touchdowns. OBJ actually led with 7 targets. But essentially, they benched some guys with a game out of hand. Andrews and Flowers played every snap. They're every down players. They're the top 2 weapons. Odell Beckham was next, 57%. He's their wide receiver 2 right now. And then everyone else kind of mixed in. They mixed in Patrick Ricard, their other tight ends. Nelson Aguilar caught a touchdown, which was also frustrating. Rashad Bateman played a little less than half the snaps. Everyone else mixed in. But OBJ, maybe if this is going to be the norm, maybe OBJ will be a desperation wide receiver 4 instead of the wide receiver 6 I had him ranked at this week. All things considered, though, I love to see it for Lamar Jackson, and I hope this is the start of a trend. Let's talk about Dalton Kincaid, speaking about starts of trends. He'd been kind of getting good usage all year, but he came back from the concussion this week, and he delivered. 8 for 75, caught all 8 targets. He delivered. Finally actually delivered a fantasy-relevant performance. He hadn't really done that yet. Dawson Knox played similar snaps, but just had 1 catch for 10 yards. When they were passing, Dalton Kincaid was almost always in. When they were running, Dawson Knox was almost always in. So I think that they see Dalton Kincaid as a receiver. He, I believe, got blown up on a block, if I remember that correctly. Dalton Kincaid, you didn't draft him to block. He's not good at it. Dawson Knox is a better blocker than Dalton Kincaid. I think everyone would agree on that. So they're starting to get Dalton Kincaid more involved as a receiver. We see Gabe Davis, not it. And I think next week we see that 63% snap share he was on maybe go up to 80. Because he was up there earlier in the season at points. But I think just seeing that this upside is there, an 8-target game, 8 receptions at tight end is a lot. I think that means he is in the tight end 1 range moving forward. Maybe low end for now until we see a trend, but he's a must-start tight end in most formats. Speaking of rookies breaking out, takeaway 4, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. He broke out, and I'm proud. 4, 63, and 1 on 7 targets. It wasn't the monster day it was looking like because his first catch was the touchdown, but he did something good. Pete Carroll said that he was finally now healthy from the wrist injury. The cast came off. So I think that was what was holding him back. They weren't so confident in his usage. I do think that it's also important to point out Jake Bobo had 4 for 61 and a touchdown, 5 targets, including an incredible catch. He's probably a must-add in most Dynasty formats, especially deeper ones. But the thing is, DK Metcalf was missing this week, and he was missing from the offense. He's averaging 67 yards a game. It's better yardage rate per game than 3 of his 4 previous years. He's not a fantasy wide receiver 1 anymore. I think we have to accept that about DK Metcalf. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is probably going to destroy that upside just because it's split 2. The targets are split among now 3 players. But DK Metcalf, when he comes back, is the wide receiver 1 on this team. Not a wide receiver 1 for fantasy, but the wide receiver 1 on this team. However, it is important to note that there has been a decline from Tyler Lockett. He's averaging just 4.5 catches and 48.2 yards per game. Now, those are not horrible numbers, but the yards are his worst mark since 2017. Receptions, the worst since 2018. So he's 31 years old. He's in decline. It's fair to say that. He is in decline. And if you told me that by week 11, Jaxon Smith-Njigba was ranked weekly ahead of Tyler Lockett, I would believe you. I think that that's possible. For next week, assuming DK Metcalf comes back, I think I'll still have it Metcalf clear 1, Lockett probably 2 in like the wide receiver 3 range, and then JSN also kind of in the lower end wide receiver 3 range. Last takeaway, speaking of frustrating things, Emari Demercado was a workhorse 1 week too late. 1 week too late. Last week, 43% of snaps, 2 carries for 11 yards, 1 catch for 6 yards. Played behind Damian Williams and Keontae Ingram. Everyone dropped him. Now this week, he didn't have a great fantasy day because he didn't score, but he played 80% of snaps, 13 carries, and 4 catches, totaled 75 yards. He was a fine play. Keontae Ingram didn't play. No snaps at all. Damian Williams served as the backup. So I don't know what the takeaway is. Maybe next week, Keontae Ingram will be the starter. For now, I guess you have to trust that Demercado will be the starter moving forward. But you just have to understand that this Cardinals backfield is risky until James Conner gets back. You can't trust anyone. Nobody's going to be inside the top 25. I don't care about the matchup. You got to understand that there's risk. But for now, of course, when no one played him, Demercado was a workhorse. So those were my 5 takeaways from this week. I also want to get into a few Patreon questions. And if you want to sign up for the Patreon, the link is in the top right corner of this video. You can click on it. It's also in the show description below. I'll also have it in a comment. And additionally, patreon.com/fantasy advice, 7-day free trials available at all tiers. And all patrons get to ask questions in advance for the show. Let's jump into question 1. What's the outlook on Josh Downs? Is his early success sustainable or fluky? Okay, so it's been kind of up and down. He had a really big day. I believe he had like 125 yards, but it was only on 6 targets. I don't know if Gardner Minshew is going to have this kind of day every week. Michael Pittman had 14 targets last week and Josh Downs barely existed. I do think that Michael Pittman is the 1 and Josh Downs is the 2. On weeks where the 2 big passing weeks, I think Josh Downs will be okay. If the volume is smaller, I think Michael Pittman is still a lot more reliable than Josh Downs. So I think he's shown talent, though. And situations change. I don't know what it will be like with Anthony Richardson, who's out for the year. But it is clear that Josh Downs is a talented player and has dynasty value. That much for sure. Do you think Jahmyr Gibbs earned more workload even when Monty comes back after his performance yesterday? I'm not doing this again. I'm going to assume, until I see otherwise, that when David Montgomery comes back, he will be the starter and he will get the majority of the work. That will be what I will assume until I see that that does not happen. But what I did like here is that Jahmyr Gibbs showed he played an 87% snap share. He showed that if he is the starter in this role. He can handle a full workhorse role. He did very well. He was targeted, I believe, 10 times in the passing game. He also had carries. Great game overall. 20 opportunities, I think. 9 receptions, 11 carries. So he had a great game. So he showed he can do it, which is the first step. Now let's see what happens when Montgomery comes back. I'm not going to say that he earned more, though, because Dan Campbell seems to think otherwise. And yeah, similarly, Gibbs is an RB1 when Montgomery is out. Now, I think we can say that, especially in PPR. If Montgomery is in, I think Gibbs is more of a low-end RB2 in PPR, and in half PPR, maybe a high-end RB3, more like that kind of range. Is Mac Jones a buy low? Well, I mean, he had one of the best games of the year. I believe he was 25 for 30, and he beat the Bills, and he had a good game. He was good. 25 for 30, 272, and 2 touchdowns. He played well. There's no saying that it was lucky. I think Mac Jones is one of the best 32 quarterbacks on planet Earth. I do. I think he should be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I do. I think he will be probably a starting quarterback for someone next year. This win makes it a lot more likely he'll be the Patriots starting quarterback, because they're probably already pushed themselves out of Caleb Williams. And I don't know if they're even going to be second to last for Drake May. And anyone else, I'm not sure, is good enough to kick Mac Jones to the curb. So, yes, he's a buy low, but in Superflex, I'm not paying a first for Mac Jones. If I can get him for a second, I think I would do it. But it would be, I'm not really willing to pay much more. I just don't see any upside. I think he's a starting quarterback, but unless he becomes the 49ers starting quarterback, which is not going to happen, he has to be in like a perfect system to be more than a mid quarterback 2 for fantasy. Better for real life than for fantasy, in my opinion, on Mac Jones. Thoughts on the Bears with Tyson Bagent at quarterback. So I did actually have a few thoughts on the Bears. My main thought was that Tyson Bagent looked fine. He only threw 162 passing yards in 29 attempts, which is not good. But he did take care of the ball. He did take 3 carries for 24 yards. They ran their offense through Deonta Foreman. But the main takeaway is that DJ Moore is the one, no matter who the quarterback is. He had 9 targets, 8 for 54. With Justin Fields, I think DJ Moore is a low-end 1. With Tyson Bagent, DJ Moore is a middling to low-end 2. Wide receiver 2. But the main change was that Darnell Mooney, not Cole Kmet, was the secondary target. Darnell Mooney had, I believe he had 4 targets, caught all 4 of them for 32 yards. Cole Kmet, no targets at all. So with Tyson Bagent in, Cole Kmet, not startable. Darnell Mooney is like, a low-end 4, maybe a high-end wide receiver 5, but better than he was before. So that's the change with Bagent at quarterback. And he does show an affinity for Tyler Scott, who should be on rosters in all Dynasty leagues, the Bears rookie 4th-round pick. Last question. Is JT finally here? Is the return real? So he still split time with Zach Moss, but Jonathan Taylor had 18 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown and 3 for 45. He was more effective on the ground than Moss. I think this was the week we're ramping up. We had everything Moss, mostly Moss. Now we got to 50-50. I think next week we get to mostly Taylor. I think next week Taylor is the starter. Taylor gets the majority of work. It's 60-40 in Taylor's favor. Whereas this week, the opportunities were basically 50-50. So I do think he's back. I think that he looked excellent in this game. Shifty. He looked like the old Jonathan Taylor. So in terms of talent, I think he's back. He has the contract extension. And I think next week, he gets the majority of work over Moss for the first time. 60-40, 65-35 kind of split. But Zach Moss is not going away. Zach Moss is going to continue to exist. So I do think Jonathan Taylor is more of a low-end RB1 until we see that he's getting all the work instead of just the majority of work. I appreciate everyone for watching this video. Thanks to the patrons for asking all of the questions. And you can sign up in that link in the top right corner in the show comments. And make sure to like, comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And until next time, I will see you all later. Peace out.